That morning, the snowy mountains of Snowpine woke beneath a thick gray veil of mist. An icy chill sliced sharply through every crevice of rock and each frozen branch. Nestled quietly at the foot of the mountain was a small wildlife rescue center where Elliot, a young veterinarian, was preparing for his morning shift alongside Lucas, a seasoned older ranger, and Clara, a young volunteer who always carried a warm smile. As the rescue center's door swung open, an urgent phone call broke the silence. A hiker had reported finding an injured snow lynx cub, motionless, at the bottom of a ravine. Elliot grabbed his coat, his heart pounding as Lucas firmly said, "If it's still alive, we can't hesitate." Arriving at the scene, they saw the tiny snow lynx. Its gray-white fur coated heavily in frost, its legs limp and unmoving, and faint breaths leaving traces of mist in the frozen air. Golden amber eyes gazed upward, not growling, not fleeing, just a heavy pleading look that silently begged for help. Elliot knelt down, his chest tightening painfully as he whispered softly, "We won't leave you behind, little one." Lucas gently draped the thick rescue blanket over the tiny, trembling body, his rough, weathered hands shaking just slightly. Clara stood beside him, quickly handing over a warm water bottle, her voice catching as she whispered, "Its heart is still beating, Elliot." Elliot gave a small nod, drawing in a deep breath to steady himself. "We need to get it back to the center right now." The rescue truck rumbled through the night, covering over 500 kilometers of ice-covered roads, winding across mountain passes and through dense pine forests. In the back seat, the little snow lynx was tightly wrapped in the thick blanket, letting out occasional faint, raspy breaths, its four legs twitching weakly in exhausted reflex. Every few minutes, Elliot leaned over to check its heartbeat, his eyes red and strained with worry. By the time they arrived at the Snowpine Veterinary Center, the medical team was already in place, operating room lights glowing, the sharp scent of antiseptics filling the air. The X-rays brought heavy news. Mild spinal nerve damage, with nearly no reflex in the hind legs. Several small wounds lined its legs and belly, likely from a fall or failed climb in the wild. Lucas gripped Elliot's shoulder as the younger man stood frozen, staring at the scans. "Kid, don't give up so soon." Clara placed a gentle hand on Elliot's other arm, her eyes burning with quiet determination. "We're going to do everything we can for it." Inside the dim, softly lit room, the little snow lynx lay motionless, its wet fur clinging to thin ribs, its small nose twitching slightly. And for the first time, Elliot saw something inside those golden, amber eyes, not fear, not wild anger, but a small, delicate flicker that shone clearly, quietly. "I want to live." In the first hours at the center, Elliot and the medical team worked tirelessly. The little snow lynx was placed inside a temperature-controlled oxygen chamber, where every fragile, shallow breath echoed clearly across the monitor screen. Clara gently wiped away the mud-streaked scratches along its back, her voice barely a whisper, like comforting a child. "It's okay, little one. We're here now." When the first small dish of food, a soft, nutrient-rich meat blend, was placed near its nose, the entire team held their breath. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, a tiny pink tongue peeked out, barely brushing the edge of the dish. One lick, then another. Slowly, tentatively, the fragile snow lynx began to eat. Not much, but enough to spark a glimmer of hope. Elliot felt his eyes sting, his hands clenched tightly. "It's not giving up," he whispered. Lucas, standing nearby, let out a tired but proud chuckle. "That's one little snow warrior," he murmured. After eating, the lynx was given pain medication, its wounds treated with antibiotic ointments, and its hind legs gently massaged to stimulate nerve responses. Strangely, through it all, the little creature didn't growl, didn't struggle, only watched, its golden amber eyes following every caring hand. And slowly, that gaze softened, not wild or fearful, but quietly, cautiously, trusting. Clara let out a relieved sigh, murmuring, "Maybe it knows we're trying to help." Elliot gently stroked the lynx's snow-soft fur, a profound wave of emotion welling inside him. That night, for the first time, the rescue team wasn't just a group of doctors. They had become something more, a fragile bridge between survival and wilderness, between human hands and the delicate heartbeat of the wild. On the third day, Elliot stepped into the care unit, his heart racing as his eyes fell on the neatly arranged straw nest inside the oxygen chamber. The little snow lynx, which had lain motionless for days, was now struggling to move. Its hind legs remained weak, almost unresponsive, but its front paws were beginning to push up, inch by determined inch. Clara let out a soft cheer. "Elliot, look! It's trying to come out." Lucas walked over, a rare gentleness softening his weathered face beneath gray brows. "Stubborn little thing," he murmured. From that day on, the team decided to change the feeding routine. They placed the food dish slightly farther from the nest, gently forcing the lynx to crawl toward it. At first, every movement seemed like a battle. The small paws slipping on the floor, the tense muscles in its belly, the labored, huffing breaths filling the quiet room. But slowly, day by day, week by week, the little lynx began to scoot forward, inching ever closer to its prize. Elliot often sat nearby, meticulously jotting down notes, his heart warming as he watched the lynx stretch its neck, lick its lips, and glance around with brighter, more alert eyes. Clara brought in soft toys, a ball, a faux bone that the lynx ignored at first. But soon a tiny paw would swat at them, a small mouth would test a nibble. Lucas chuckled softly. "It's a quick learner. Nature never gives up without a fight," Elliot whispered under his breath, as if speaking not just to the lynx, but to himself. "You don't just want to survive. You want to remember how to be a lynx." Inside that small room, every crawl, every lick, every faint flick of the tail stood as quiet proof of something miraculous. That even amid pain, even under the weight of paralysis, this fragile snow lynx dared to push back against the darkness bit by bit, on its journey back to the wild instincts it was born to reclaim. On a bone-chilling winter night, sharp gusts of wind howled through the Snowpine region, slicing across the forest and rattling the windows of the small rescue center. Elliot stood silently by the window, watching thick snow blanket the world outside, the trees bending under its heavy weight. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the space into darkness. Lucas rushed in, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, worry etched deep across his weathered face. "The generators failed. We need to act now, or the little lynx won't survive this cold." Elliot didn't waste a second. He sprinted to the small recovery pen where the snow lynx lay trembling, its fragile body shivering violently as the room temperature plummeted. Its golden amber eyes lifted weakly toward him, a faint, pleading look that pierced straight through his chest. Without hesitation, Elliot opened the pen, scooping the little creature into his arms, feeling its icy, frail body against his chest, his heart tightening painfully. Clara appeared moments later, arms full of blankets and heated water packs. The three of them worked quickly, wrapping the lynx in layers of warmth, trying desperately to hold off the creeping chill. But the cold was so fierce that their own breaths turned to pale mist in the dark, their fingers growing numb as they worked. "I'm going out to fix the generator," Lucas said firmly, pulling his coat tight. "You two, keep it warm until I get back." Without waiting for a reply, Lucas disappeared into the blizzard outside. Inside, Elliot and Clara huddled close, the little lynx nestled between them, its faint breath puffing softly against their hands. The room was silent, save for the sound of their quickening heartbeats and the low howl of the storm. Never before had the helplessness against nature felt so sharp, so immediate. Time stretched painfully, every second thick with fear. Then, just as suddenly, the low rumble of the generator stirred to life. Lights flickered back on, casting a soft glow across the room. Lucas stumbled back inside, his coat and hat covered in snow, his face breaking into a relieved, tired smile. It's back up. We've got it stabilized. Elliot let out a shaky breath, closing his eyes briefly as he felt warmth slowly seep back into the tiny body, pressed close to his chest. And in that fragile moment, he understood. This wasn't just another rescue. This was a battle. A fight to shield one small, vulnerable life from the crushing power of the wild. And tonight, just barely, they had won. After the storm, pale sunlight slowly returned to Snowpine, casting a quiet calm over the rescue center. The little snow lynx was recovering quickly now. It could move around, leap nimbly, its golden eyes sparkling with boundless curiosity about the world beyond the window. One late afternoon, Elliot stood silently, watching the lynx play. His heart grew heavy. The time had come for the hardest decision of all, to keep it here, safe but confined, or to return it to the wild, where danger waited but freedom called. Clara approached softly, her voice gentle yet laced with worry. "Elliot, do you think it can survive out there?" Elliot shook his head slowly, his eyes clouded with doubt. "I don't know, but keeping it here, no matter how safe, isn't the life it's meant for." Lucas entered then, his voice steady and calm. "Every creature has the right to live free, even when freedom comes with risk." Lucas's words settled something inside Elliot, firming his resolve. The next morning, they prepared for the journey to the Snowpine forest's edge. When the cage door opened, the little lynx hesitated, glancing around carefully, then turned back to look at them, holding their gaze for a long, quiet moment. Elliot knelt down, his voice soft but unwavering. "Go on, little one. The wild is waiting for you." The lynx looked at him one last time, then, with delicate steps, moved forward out of the cage, across the snow, and into the vast, waiting forest. The three stood there for a long time, silent and moved. None of them spoke aloud, but in their hearts, they all understood. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is to set free what you cherish most, even when it leaves your heart aching. Time passed quietly, ushering spring back into the Snowpine Mountains. Elliot often wandered along the forest's edge, his heart quietly wondering how the little snow lynx was faring now in the wild. A gentle but persistent longing sometimes made him pause, glancing up at the slightest rustle in the underbrush. One early morning, with a thin veil of mist still covering the path, Elliot stopped near a small lake at the forest's edge. A soft noise caught his ear. He lifted his gaze, and his heart suddenly quickened. There, standing just beyond the mist, was a familiar figure, the little lynx from long ago, now fully grown and strong. The lynx stood still, its clear amber eyes fixed on Elliot, watching him silently. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. No sound, no movement, just two gazes meeting quietly across the soft, misty morning. Elliot dared not step closer. He simply smiled, gentle and quiet. The lynx, too, remained motionless, as if sending a wordless message through its steady, glowing eyes. After a long moment, it slowly turned, stepping softly back into the deep forest, disappearing among the shadowy trees. Elliot stood frozen, his chest stirring with a deep, indescribable emotion. That brief reunion was enough. It told him everything he needed to know. The lynx was alive, free, and had never forgotten the human who once saved it. As Elliot walked slowly back toward the rescue center, his heart felt light, peaceful. Nature had given him its most precious gift, a reunion without words, yet filled with meaning. Sometimes, the deepest bonds need no words at all. Since the day the snow lynx returned to the wild, the story of Snowpine spread quietly, not through flashy headlines or sensational news, but through the tender whispers of townspeople. Everyone spoke softly of the small rescue team who had chosen heart over rules, who had the courage to return a wild life to the place it truly belonged. Local children began visiting the rescue center more often, gathering eagerly around Elliot and Clara, their eyes sparkling with admiration as they listened to the tale of the little snow lynx. Clara would explain gently, "Nature doesn't need us to rule over it. Nature just asks that we listen and respect. Lucas, usually a man of few words, surprised them all by deciding to write a small book. Its pages didn't boast of great victories, but instead told of small, resilient lives in the snowy mountains of the quiet trust built between humans and the wild. Elliot continued his quiet work, tending to animals and training volunteers. Yet each time he looked into the eyes of the visiting children, he understood that they had planted something precious in these young hearts, a seed of empathy, of unconditional Korea, small legacy, but one that would live on. At the end of that spring, the rescue center received a hand-drawn picture, colored with crayons, the lines wobbly but filled with love. It showed a tiny snow lynx standing beside a man, with childlike writing that read, "Thank you for sending my friend home." Elliot smiled softly as he pinned the drawing to the window, and deep inside he understood. The compassion they had chosen wasn't just for one life. It had become a living legacy, touching every heart that had ever heard their story. Years later, the Snowpine Rescue Center had become something special, not just a place for saving wild animals, but a destination for those eager to learn how to live in harmony with nature. Elliot, now older and more seasoned, carried in his eyes a calmness, a deep understanding of the true meaning of wildlife. One morning, just after the snow had stopped falling, Elliot wandered alone along the familiar edge of the forest. Soft sunlight spilled across the snow, scattering glimmering rays like tiny stars. Amidst the peaceful stillness, a silent figure emerged from behind frost-covered bushes. The snow lynx, now strong, proud, its silver-white coat glowing beautifully, stood at a distance, watching Elliot intently. Elliot halted, his heart slowing in the hush of the moment. Time seemed to stretch, infinite and delicate. Neither moved, no sound was made, only two gazes locking quietly, sharing a wordless exchange of gratitude. At last, the lynx slowly turned, stepping gracefully back into the cool shadows of the forest, leaving behind only faint paw prints on the snowy ground. Elliot stood still for a long while, his chest swelling with quiet thankfulness. He understood that life had gifted him a rare privilege, not to be a savior of nature, but to be someone nature had chosen, someone who listens, who walks beside it, and who learns to love without condition. As he made his way back to the center, Elliot smiled softly, realizing that he would forever carry the memory of that graceful silhouette in his heart. A living reminder that the purest love asks for no possession, and the truest happiness comes from watching what you cherish live freely.